Coming up, what went wrong in the series against the Giants and what 12 pitchers should have been named to the NL All-Star Game? Ben Kaspick is here to join us and breaking it all down for you next. That is not the video.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, listening to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Miller Thomas. I'm a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer, so please go check out my website, millerthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. If you want to see more content by me, just follow me on Twitter at CreatorThomas24 for my personal account, or look up Locked On Diamondbacks, both Twitter, Instagram for the podcast handle. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. Would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free and available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. And today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, the D-backs are coming off a very tough finale loss to the Giants, just a tough series overall. So, of course, we've been promising that he's going to come on the pod, and here he is, Ben Kaspick of Locked On Giants. Let me get my name out of there. I don't think we've talked. We were saying before, off air, I don't think we've talked since the roundtable, Ben. It's been a minute. How you doing?
It has been a minute. For me, it kind of somehow flew by, but, I mean, here we are more than halfway through the season. It's crazy. A baseball season is so long, but also it kind of goes by fast. But
yeah, I think just the pace of playing every day probably helps with that, making it feel like it's going by a little bit quicker. But we're here today because, unfortunately, the D-backs, I mean, fortunate for you guys are probably happy over there. But us D-backs fans, sadly, we lost this series to the Giants. And that finale was just real tough if you're a D-backs fan. I mean, you've seen that story a lot this season. You've seen that story a lot the last couple of years, where maybe you get a really good starting performance. You feel like your team is really close to victory. You're good. You're clear through 6, 7, sometimes even 8 innings. And then the bullpen comes in and they just absolutely blow it. But even before the bullpen came in, I just felt like Toy Lavello left Zach Gallen in the game a little bit too long, and the Giants hitters were finally able to get to Zach Gallen in that 7th inning.
Yeah, and the Giants desperately needed it. I mean, they were a couple innings away from another series loss to Arizona, and, no offense, it's just the reality. Arizona, a below 500 team, and that has been a major theme for the Giants this year. They lost both series that they played against the Reds. They got swept by the White Sox. They split against the Tigers. They just have not really played well against sub 500 teams. And to lose both series against Arizona would have been, at home especially, it just would have been tough. And so it was really big for them, because they've been like flirting with 500. So they're really trying to make a push and gain some separation from that 500 mark. And they were able to do it a little bit today.
I've been talking on the pod recently about maybe the D-backs can go on like a little run and not become some great juggernaut team, but maybe play, 500 baseball heading into the All-Star break. Now that the lineup is fully healthy, you got your great defense behind your starting pitchers. But you look at it today, like Zach Gallen is great and Toy Lavello just keeps him in a little bit too long. Like after he gives up that home run to Brandon Belt, I think in that 7th inning, like I'm probably pulling Zach Gallen after that moment, because he's already at 90 plus pitches. He's already had a great game, and then you let him stay in for a single and then a double after that, and then even the sac fly. Like I don't understand why Zach Gallen was still in the game after all those base hits and home runs he's given up. And then after him, Joe Mantiply, who was just recently named to the All-Star game for the D-backs. I don't know what it is, but ever since he's been named an All-Star, the Giants have had his number, because the first game of the series, he almost blew it in that first game. Because what's today? Wednesday. So Monday's game, he almost blew it. Thankfully, Noah Ramirez was able to get an inducing ground ball double play that was able to get them out the 8th inning jam. But even today, Joe Mantiply also gave up a home run to Wilmer Flores. Like, what is it about Joe Mantiply, I guess, that just seems that the Giants hitters like to see him in when he's in the ball game?
And they did it to him last week. Exactly a week ago today, the D-backs, I think they were going for the sweep, and they had a similar game to today. They had a 4-0 lead in that game, and the Giants came back, and Darren Ruff hit a pinch hit home run against Mantiply. And that was the first pinch hit home run of the year for the Giants, who set a major league record last year with 18 pinch hit home runs. And they didn't get their first until halfway through this season. And then today, Wilmer Flores, that was also a pinch hit home run. And so some of it is just like the Giants are due for a little bit of success. I mean, due is kind of a funny thing, but they're just bound. These hitters, Darren Ruff, Wilmer Flores, they hit left-handed pitching. Diamondbacks fans are, they've seen Wilmer Flores up close in person. He can run into one. And so Mantiply is having a good year, but it's just a little bit like Giants were just bound to have some success in those types of situations. They just have not done it all year. Unfortunately for D-backs fans, fortunately for Giants fans, it kind of came to fruition a little bit in the last week.
Yeah, now the D-backs are they're not firm, but they're starting to try to separate themselves from the Rockies as the last place team in the NL West, which is not a good sign. I did not want to be in the basement of the NL West. I think I have a little season-long bet with Paul Holden actually about which team is going to finish higher in the standings. Hopefully the D-backs can climb out the cellar. But speaking of the Giants' success or lack thereof this season, like what do you think has been the issue with the Giants? Because I haven't talked to you about that. Because coming into the season, I was a little bit lower on the Giants than maybe last season, just because we've talked about like no more Buster Posey, Kevin Gausman left. Of course, Rondon came in to replace him, and he's been great this season. But also lost Chris Bryant, which I thought was huge. And then it just felt like last year you just got like basically career seasons out of guys like Brandon Belt and Brandon Crawford, even guys like Cueto and Evan Longoria were pretty good. So I basically felt like you got the very best version of where your team could have been last season. I just felt like there was going to be some regression to the mean this year, and maybe that's just what we're seeing. At least from my perspective, that's what I felt like has happened to the Giants.
Yeah, it's been that, but it's also been an unexpected, just terrible slide defensively. They just they've had like not just kind of lack of range or just not being able to make a tough play, but like routine plays just messing them up in key situations and costing them games. And it has happened a lot and just at an alarming rate to the point where it's really cost them probably somewhere between 5, maybe even 10 games this season. So they could be in a much better spot, I think, if they had just been able to play better defensively. And it showed up in, like, if you look at some of the pitchers, like Alex Cobb, just by way of example, he has some of the best, like, peripheral numbers, expected numbers in the game, and yet the ERA is, like, closer to 5. And it's a lot of and Tyler Rogers is another example. These are guys who get a lot of ground balls, and they just have not been able to convert as many of them into outs as you would normally expect. And so, yeah, there's definitely some regression to the mean, but the thing is they won 107 games. And so I think we all knew that they can regress like significantly and still be like, if you can win 92 to 94 games or something, you're still in a pretty good spot, and you've lost 15 more games or so. And I think that was kind of the expectation, but in reality, they've been more like a 500 team. So it's even more regression than expected. And I really think we can attribute most of that to the defense, which has legitimately been one of the worst few defensive teams, if not the worst, in all of baseball this year.
Well, is the defense worse this year? Is it because like the makeup of the team has changed with guys like Buster Posey leaving, or have guys just like plainly regressed and they're just not as good as they were last year? Like, what's been up with that?
Yeah, that's what's frustrating and confusing about it in a way. I mean, look, it's an older roster, and so you kind of expect regression due to age with certain guys like Brandon Crawford. Yeah, a little slower, a little less hand-eye coordination, whatever the case is.
Yeah.
It has really been like Brandon Crawford last year. He was really good defensively. In his career, he's been really good defensively. He was showing some signs of slowing down prior to last year, but then last year, it just didn't show up. He was good. He was really good. But this year he's been kind of a negative defensively, and he's not a guy you expect that from, except maybe when you look at how old he is. And Brandon Belt has been injured, and when he's been on the field, he hasn't quite been the same guy. He used to be historically a very good defender as well. And it is really a lot of the same people. The catcher position has not really been the position where they've struggled defensively. I think Bart and the other catchers they've had have done a fine job there. So it's been everybody, like team-wide. Someone like Darren Ruff, you look at how big he is, and you would think he's not a good defensive player, but he actually was for the Giants for the first couple years he was here. But this year, he's played like he looks. No offense to Darren Ruff, but he's like a big guy, and he plays the outfield some, and he looks slow and
he looks like a plotter, basically.
Yeah, and it's almost like just luck and randomness in a way, because it seems like a lot of balls that are hit to them are hit like right to that range where they can't quite get there, and so it ends up like a lot of just kind of close borderline plays, but also just kicking the ball around, just like boneheaded, like air mailing throws, just everything you can imagine. It's just been sloppy and ugly, but it has tightened up in the last week or so. So hopefully they can keep that going, because if they don't, it's hard to win when you're giving away like 5 extra outs every game, which was really what it seemed like for a long stretch of time.
Yeah, because I want to ask you where you think the Giants' chances are of making the postseason in pursuit of winning a championship ring. But speaking of rings, Ben Kaspick, do you know where the best place to purchase a ring is?
BlueNile.com, because of the convenience of doing it online, for me, is the game changer.
That's right, Ben. Whether you're ready to pop the question or you're celebrating a milestone moment, find jewelry as unique as her with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. Blue Nile has simple online tools that let you choose the diamond shape, size, and clarity, as well as setting style. Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then handcraft her perfect engagement ring. Each ring is one of a kind, just like her. Looking for fine jewelry but having trouble choosing? Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. Make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com, and Locked On listeners get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement. Use code Locked On. That's code Locked On. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever peace. Go to BlueNile.com today. All right, Ben Kaspick, I want to ask you about the postseason, but before we get there, I first want to ask you, do you have any, I feel like you probably don't, but how do you just feel about Kris Bryant so far in Colorado? Do you have any regrets about him leaving? Do you wish he was still in this lineup? Because I know it's been up and down for him over there.
Him specifically, probably not, just because of it definitely has been a struggle with the injuries. He missed a lot of time with that back injury, and that's the thing. He's kind of become a player you worry about injuries with over the last few years. He's had knee problems, he's had back problems, and he's turned it on since coming off the injured list. He's currently on the, I think, paternity list, but he was pretty good since coming off. Certainly some star talent offensively in the middle of this lineup. When you lose a Posey, you lose a Bryant, who they acquired at the deadline, would be nice. But I'm not sure he's the one guy I'm focused on, particularly given the contract he got, which was, 7 years, $182 million or something?
It was a lot.
Yeah. Because this is something that doesn't get talked about a lot, but he was so bad defensively for the Giants. And if you look at like outs above average and all that, he was like by far their worst defensive player last year. And he didn't play a lot. Like, he was only there a couple months, and yet he accumulated more negative outs above average than anybody else on the team. And so a guy who's big and kind of dealing with back and knee issues and was already struggling defensively, he's not the guy for me. But it is nice to have kind of that big name in the middle of your lineup, even so. And the Giants do miss that a little bit.
Yeah, and you signed Jock Peterson for 5% of that deal, and he's been way better than Kris Bryant so far this year. So I think you've actually won that, transaction, losing Kris Bryant and gaining Jock Peterson. It's kind of funny, though, you haven't had the addition by subtraction when it comes to the defense, though, considering how bad Kris Bryant was.
Could have been worse, I guess.
Yeah, it could have been worse. But how do you feel about this Giants team overall? I mean, I've heard you talk a lot, today about how their defense has been bad, but where's your confidence level, I guess, of them actually making the postseason? Because this is still a pretty good roster. They still know how to win games, and coming off the season that they had last year, I still feel like there should be some built-in equity in terms of them making the postseason. Yeah,
I feel kind of on the fence about whether or not they're going to make the postseason, and I think that's probably reflected in the actual statistical probability of it, because right now they're 2 games back, and so it's hard to say when you're currently out of the picture 2 games back at the last spot. And something that raised my confidence level about will they make it or not is yesterday their president of baseball operations met with the media and said that if they're in a position where they're right there or a couple games back, they are a team that they feel like they want to push their chips in as opposed to selling if you're just a couple games out of a playoff spot. And so they've been known to make a significant acquisition, whether it's Chris Bryant or whoever it may be. I think that they've massively underperformed their talent. And by massively, I'm not saying this is a 107 win team, but are they a 90 win team? I think that they can be, certainly, but they haven't played like that so far. And 90 wins isn't that great. And I think they could even be a little bit better than that, given that they're currently only whatever they are, 45 and 42 or something.
Yeah, and considering the Blue Jays just fired their manager for a team that's like 4 games above 500 and would be in the postseason if the season ended today, like I guess that's not good enough to keep your job anymore. So maybe Gabe Kapler has to put a little pressure on.
I was surprised by that a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing though. It's like a lot of people around here talk about how they didn't do enough to get like the star talent that was out there, and it's a fair criticism because their payroll didn't go up coming off the season that they just had, and their payroll is kind of a little bit above average, but it's nothing crazy. It's nothing like the Dodgers. It's not even close to the Padres. And you had all this star talent available, Bryant among them, and Trevor Story and Simeon and Seager and all these guys. They didn't get any of them. Like you said, they got Peterson, and he's been very good, and Carlos Rodon has been very good. But the Blue Jays, I just have to say, they've got the star talent, and it doesn't necessarily lead to a great record. They've got, young impact talent. They've got Gosman as well. Look at the Angels. They've got Trout and Ohtani, and they can't win. And so it kind of takes a whole roster. You need depth, you need platoon advantages, and you need star talent.
Yeah, unless you're the Dodgers, where star every position, and that kind of changes the formula a little bit. If you're like, oh, I just got MVP at 4 different spots in my lineup, that probably changes things a little.
But if you think about it, before they got Betts and Trey Turner and Freddie Freeman, they were still really good, and they were kind of a homegrown team with Bellinger and Seager and Buehler and Kershaw and Kenley Jansen.
They got Urias, Buehler, I don't know if you said him already too.
Yeah, so they're built from the ground up, and I think that that's important to keep in mind. They're not just a team that is built through free agency at all. They're really kind of foundationally built on their farm system.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing about the Dodgers that sucks. Like, it's not only that they could go out there and get any free agent or pull off any trade that they want, it's also that they have this incredible farm system that allows them to pull off these trades and stuff. And they actually, when those guys get called up, it's not like the Yankees where you're waiting on the Clint Frazier's for 8 years to materialize. No, when the Dodgers call these guys up, they turn into the Will Smiths, where they're like the best catcher in baseball of a sudden.
I know.
Which is just not fair if you're the Dodgers to have both. But do you have any names that you're looking at for the trade deadline for the Giants? I know you brought it up.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a great class when you look at who's probably out there. You're talking about like Josh Bell and Brandon Drury being a couple of the better players available.
Freight Train if you want, if you need outfield.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's the type of guy that the Giants like. I mean, he's kind of a platoon guy, much better against right-handed pitching, always done well against right-handed pitching. They have a lot of left-handed outfielders, so
okay.
I'm not sure about him. Yeah, it's hard to pinpoint exactly.
Oh, I got one for you, Ben. Let's get a little reunion going, huh? A little reunion, a little mad bump to the Giants.
People have said that. A lot of people mentioned that around here.
Yeah, we'll probably have to pay half his contract if we trade him to the Giants, I'm guessing. There's no way
he's having a nice season.
Yeah, he's been solid. It's all because if you were to trade for Mad Bum, I told anyone you need Brent Strom in the deal as well, because I think Mad Bum's falling apart without Brent Strom on his pitching, behind him in his ear. But Ben, I guess we might as well do this NL All-Star ballot with the pitchers. But I think this segment has probably gone long enough, so we'll save it for segment number 3. And if you want to place a bet, do you know where the best place to place your bet is, Ben?
Only place I go. Bet online.
There we go. BetOnline.net is your number one source for your betting needs and sports info. Follow the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoffs and Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right. Let's get into our all-star ballots. We're going to listen to Ben's 12 pitchers. I actually have my own little ballot of pitchers here, so we'll see how closely our two ballots are lined up and see where we have differences. So there's no particular order or power ranking, just from top to bottom. I don't know how you have it categorized, alphabetical, or who you think most deserving, but start off with any name you want, Ben.
Yeah, so I did kind of categorize it. I broke it into slam dunks.
Okay, I like this.
And I've got great but not elite.
Oh, this is fun.
And then I've got fringe, and then I've got relievers. And we talked about this before we started recording, how the reliever, it's tough to kind of make a call between an excellent reliever and a very good starter.
Yeah.
Because of some very good start, they pitch more innings. And that's part of what ticked me off so much when Rodon didn't make the All-Star game at first. He got in, thankfully, as an injury replacement. But a guy like Kershaw, as good as he's been, he's pitched like 40 fewer innings than Carlos Rodon, and to me that matters a lot.
So who are the Giants sending if it wasn't going to be Rodon?
Peterson. Peterson made it in as a fan vote. He's starting the game.
He's starting? How did I miss that? Peterson is starting the
Which to me, that's way more egregious than... I mean, no offense to Peterson. He's been a good addition, but he's not one of the best 8 position players in the league.
That's crazy. I didn't know he was starting. I don't know how I overlooked that one. Okay, I didn't know. Okay, Peterson. I mean, he just he gets slapped, and I guess the fans love him. So respect to Peterson on that one.
He's a likable dude.
Yeah, he's likable.
I mean, I didn't like him as much when he was on the Dodgers, but he grew up a Giants fan, so he's fit in nicely over here. But anyway, my slam dunks.
Okay.
This is tough because I don't really they're all good.
Let's start with the bottom. If you got it categorized like that, let's start with the fringe guys and then work our way to slam dunks.
Okay, maybe. My hot take fringe guy might be a lot of people's number 1 guy.
Oh, whoa, okay.
And that's Tony Gonsolin.
Okay.
And the reason for that is here's the thing that I struggle with when I think about this, and the same would be true if it was like Cy Young voting. Is it about just pure run prevention, or is it about like the underlying kind of peripheral numbers that suggest maybe what you deserve and what you would perform like over a larger sample? So is it like process, or is it actual results? And anybody can make a case for actual results, and I wouldn't argue with that. So for Gonsolin, the ERA is so good. Currently pitching right now, I haven't checked in on that score, but I've got him. I got to have him in. So he makes it, but he's more of a fringe case.
Okay. He's on my list too. I mean, Gonsolin's been a beast this year. I'm looking at his numbers right now. Leads the National League in ERA, as you said, but also leads the National League in WHIP and hits per 9. So when you're talking about not putting base runners on, not giving up earned runs, he's been one of the best. But I do agree the sample size is a little bit smaller for him compared to some other guys I'm sure you're going to talk about.
Yeah. So these guys made it for me. Spencer Strider, I think he did not make it in reality, but if you look at, this is a guy who's like the process numbers are off the charts. The strikeout rate is just phenomenal, and he's just been so dominant, and he's moved to a starting pitching role. He was in the bullpen, and he's just continued to be dominant as a starter, and he's a good story in baseball. So I've got him there.
Second-year player too, 23 years old. Not a big sample size, but been phenomenal this year for Atlanta.
Other fringe guys for me: Kyle Wright, Miles Michaelis,
okay,
Pablo Lopez, Clayton Kershaw, and Merrill Kelly makes my list. That guy deserves more respect than he gets. He pitched great the other night.
So these are honorable mentions then?
Yeah, exactly. I got Strider and Gonsolin making it. Sorry, yeah. And then those other guys are my just missed fringe guys.
Okay, respect to Merrill Kelly then, because he's been probably the best D-backs pitcher, honestly, this year. It's been close, with him, Bumgarner, and Zach Allen. They kind of all alternate who's the best starter. But I do think Merrill Kelly is actually probably the workhorse in terms of who I expect to give me the most length start to start is probably Merrill Kelly out the rotation.
Yep. Where do you want to go next? I got relievers. I got great, but not elite. Those guys all make it.
Okay, actually, I think I want to do the reverse now. Let's start with the slam dunks and then work our way down. Because then we're starting with the easiest ones, and then maybe there's some more discussion.
Yeah, so my slam dunk, Sandy Alcantara.
Of course.
He's the guy who makes it first. He's the guy where actual results meet process results, and he's just at the top of both lists right now. I think like
Oh
the
yeah,
ERA is crazy, but also the peripherals are crazy.
he leads the league in almost everything. If it's not Tony Gonsolin, like he's the runaway Cy Young Award favorite right now in the
Yeah.
National League. It's not even close. So you don't even need to have a long discussion on Sandy.
Yep. And for me, Carlos Rodon is in this slam dunk category. And
Wow.
then I've also got Corbin Burns,
Hmm.
Max Fried, and Zach Wheeler. Wheeler currently pitching tonight and has given up some tanks to the Blue
Really?
Jays. So
Yeah.
maybe he slips, maybe depending on how bad this start goes. But those are the five I have as slam dunks.
Yeah, and Wheeler, another interesting one because he's currently an all-star snub. We'll see if
Yeah.
he, maybe he's an injury replacement, but he's been pretty good this year as well. He's got like a sub 2.5 ERA, which will probably go up after that Blue Jays start. Pretty good strikeout artist, right around double-digit strikeouts per nine. So I was pretty surprised to see Zach Wheeler not make it because I did have him on my list as well. But the NL starting pitching, like again, like if you look at the NL starting pitching, like ERA leaders the last couple of years compared to the American League, like it's a complete wash by the National League. Like last year, you just go look at that Cy Young race, like guys like, I don't know, Freddie Peralta, who's like the third starter on the Brewers, like he's not even cracking like the top 10 Cy Young voting. But if you put him in the American League, like he might have won. Like I think one of those old pitchers last year, like Kyle Gibson could have been, a Cy Young candidate if he was in the American League, or Lance Lynn. Like he's always top 4 every year in the American League the last few years, just because the depth is not that strong. That's a big reason why Robbie Ray run it. Like there's not that many elite pitchers in the American League right now compared to the National League. So I'm definitely liking your slam dunks, and I probably agree with most of them. When you talking about your honorable mentions, I actually did have Miles Mikolas on my list. I like him for the Cardinals. He's had a pretty good season. But let's move on to your next tier, I guess. Your fringe guys, or your great,
but not elite. Like these guys, it's kind of controversial for probably one or two of them to not be in the slam dunks category. But I had a reason for each one, and there's only 3 guys in this list, and it's I have them all making it on my all-star list for the NL pitchers, and it's Aaron Nola, Logan Webb, and Joe Musgrove. I think that Musgrove, a lot of people probably think of as a slam dunk, and he deserves to be there 100%. But I don't know. I think Logan Webb has a really good case to be an all-star, but he's not there at all. So, yeah.
Yeah. Aaron Nola is probably the one that stands out to me. I mean, just looking at the, quick stats, a quick traditional stat line, like his numbers just don't, compare as much to some of the other guys you mentioned, even some of those honorable mention guys like the Miles Mikolas, or even like a Pablo Lopez, who has been pretty good as well. So maybe Aaron Nola might be the one guy who's had a pretty good season so far. I just don't know if he's had the all-star season like some of these other guys that we talked about, because again, the NL pitching is just insanely deep this year. So I don't know if Nola would have cracked my roster.
Yeah, I think it's a case of the results versus kind of underlying numbers with Nola. The ERA is 3.35, but the FIP is 2.92, expected ERA 2.91. All these other kind of peripheral numbers suggest maybe more 2.9 as opposed to 3.35, and so that I put value in that. But if it's just run prevention based, then there's a lot of those guys on my just missed list who would deserve to go more. So it's a tough call, and honestly, like 12 pitchers may not be enough because all of these guys deserve to be there.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's way too deep this year, and it's been like that the last couple of years. What's next on your list? Relievers?
And it's tough. I got 2 relievers going. How many did you have?
Wow, only 2. I had
2.
I got
There's
one.
only 12 spots.
I put 3 here because I felt like I needed at least 3. Like I debated 4. I felt like 8 and 4 is a good number, but I was like, nah, I'll do 9 and 3 to make up the 12. But 2, I mean, it is tough, and we know Josh Hader, he's not going to be there because of injury, and he was a slam dunk person to make as well. So who are your 2 relievers?
I didn't have him because
Wow,
it's tough because the starters pitch so many more innings. And to me, it's like the Cy Young. You can have the greatest reliever of all time, but I'm probably not voting a reliever for the Cy Young unless there's not a great starting pitcher. You could be a great starting pitcher versus the greatest reliever of all time, and I'm probably going with the great starting pitcher because they throw so many more innings, and that just has more value. It's just like basic math, basically. So I have the 2 best, in my opinion, and that's Edwin Diaz and Ryan Helsley from the Cardinals, who's having a breakout season. for St. Louis, and Edwin Diaz, just peak Edwin Diaz this year. And my snubs are Josh Hader, Devin Williams, and AJ Minter. They all deserve it. They're great, but it's just I give the edge to starters unless it's just overwhelming.
Wow, only two. That's interesting. I did have Edwin Diaz and Heasley on my list as well, so I won't disagree with those. You do have a pretty interesting all-star battle because I know you're a guy who's pretty into the analytics. Don't you come from like Fangraphs? Didn't you used to work over there or something like that?
I wrote for the fantasy baseball side of Fangraphs.
Yeah, so we know you got to be into the heavy analytics if you used to write for Fangraphs. So I don't hate your list at all, Ben Kaspick. I do have some disagreements. Probably Aaron Nola is probably my biggest disagreement, but again, if this was such a tough list this year. Are you one to watch the All-Star game or the Home Run Derby or any of the events, or you're just like, it's kind of on, but I really don't need it?
It's kind of on. Honestly, this is as a steward of the game, like I shouldn't be saying this, but the All-Star game has become kind of boring to me because the pitching is so good that there's not a lot of action. There's just a lot of really good pitching. So if you're into pitching, it's great, but generally the pitchers are so, like every guy is elite. And so I think that the NL pitchers have a combined ERA of like 2.08 or something this year.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. So, I mean, 2 runs per 9 combined is what you're averaging from these guys. And so don't expect a high scoring game, I guess.
And it might have been a bad rule, but I don't know. Should we bring back the World Series home field advantage goes to the winner? No. At least it brings a little meaning to the game. No.
I think they should just have more fun with it and throw lobs. I don't know. It's hard to do something because in basketball, they kind of just take it easy. Baseball is just a hard sport to not play at full speed. And
maybe should they throw like underhand or do like cricket type pitching? That could be kind of interesting. Like softball pitching, do the whole wind-up kind of thing and just let it go. I don't know. Or maybe, honestly, let's just get really crazy. Let's just give the guys like aluminum bats or something like that. Let's just hit. If you want to see, you're talking about great pitching, let's just see some nukes then with some aluminum bats. I mean, it's the All-Star game. It should probably be like a 15-12 event anyway. Like, I don't know. It should be there.
If it was 15-12, but it's usually like 3-2. In the American League, as an NL fan, the American League has dominated for like 20 years, and so it's kind of like, gosh, I wish the NL would win a game.
Which is interesting because we just talked about how it feels like all the pitching's in the National League, but I do feel like there might be more feared hitters in the American League. We look at the Otanis, the Judges, and the Vlads, like in the middle of your lineup, like that's gonna be pretty scary. But the NL's gonna have a pretty nasty lineup too. So I mean, the league is pretty loaded right now. I mean, overall, if I had to look at the balance, the National League as a conference seems pretty stronger than the American League. I think I saw today only the Astros and Yankees are like the only 2 teams in the American League on pace for like 90+ wins this season, which is just absolutely crazy.
Yet the All-Star game does seem to. I mean, I don't know. I don't remember what honestly, I gotta say, like the home field advantage thing, I hated that so much because it
didn't make sense.
It made no sense.
It was like, at least the game means something. But yeah, it didn't make
because they had the tie, and they're like, we can't have a tie. We have to make it matter. Just don't let it be a tie. Just have the extra inning rule that we have now, or allow guys to like throw under. I don't know.
I mean, growing up as a Red Sox fan, I definitely hated the rule because, like, if the Red Sox made the World Series and we had the better record than the NL team, it's like, wait, we got to put Big Papi at first. Always got to sit on the bench like the first couple games.
Because of the All-Star game. No sense.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense there. But Ben Kaspick of Locked On Giants, thanks for hopping on today. The listeners haven't heard from you in a while, so they might forget. Where can they find you online?
At Ben Kaspick on Twitter. Pretty active there. Some data-driven baseball takes,
analytics,
and, the analytics, and also some passion for the game. And the show account is on Twitter at LO_SF Giants. And what about you? Where can my listeners?
We're about the manalytics over here at the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Find us at Creator Times 24 for my personal account. Just look up Locked On Diamondbacks on both Twitter and Instagram. We're also on YouTube, so check us out. Ben Kaspick of Locked On Giants. Thanks for hopping on the pod today, sir. That's it for this edition. Of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. We'll be talking to Javier Reyes more about the All-Star game and the Home Run Derby, so go check that out. Thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. Make your second listen Locked On MLB Prospects with host Lindsey Crosby. The draft is around the corner, so you're not going to want to miss that. And as always, stay safe and stay healthy. Deuces!